Hey and welcome back to a new Paragon video. Here's a question for you. Do you want to have an advantage over the enemy every single game? Well, of course you do, which is why you should start using dummy wards. A dummy ward is a very simple and straightforward concept. You buy a free cost shadow ward and place it somewhere on the map. Then return to the base and sell the ward. This is typically done at the beginning of the game so that you can buy your dummy ward, place it, then sell it and buy your real opening items. The reason this matters is because even though you just sold the ward card, the ward you placed will still remain on the map for the full duration of that ward, which is great. This can give different advantages depending on where you actually place it and how fast you are to do it too. If you place this before the enemy can spot you, for example, then yeah, they'll have no clue that you have vision over that area. But this counts for much more when you're doing it at the start of the game. On top of that, if you place it where it matters, like an impactful place, you'll have a huge advantage in that early game, specifically over the enemy jungle. Placement of the dummy ward is very important. If you just run out there and place it in a less than ideal spot, then it's really not going to do too much for you. There's a variety of solid spots to get your dummy ward down, but the two most important spots in my opinion would be the stairs overlooking green buff in the enemy jungle and the off-lane jungle camps too. So why here? Well, vision over the enemy green buff allows you to see if the enemy jungler falls low during their opening clear. You know, maybe they mess up. And if they do, that could mean an early gank for you. You could send your mid laner or your jungler to go snag an easy kill over that enemy jungler at the right moment. That's possible, but not consistent. You know, who's putting themselves that low during the beginning? It's not always happening. However, an advanced tactic is to see what point they take green from. Using your dummy ward vision, look at when they take green. So if they take it pretty much instantly to clear out their jungle like the normal jungle route, then you know that they're not going to have the green shield at that 3-minute mark just as the river buff spawns. So that allows your jungler to wait longer to grab their own green, clearing out the white camps first, just buying some time, and grabbing green as late as possible to dive in on the enemy jungler just as they're going for the first river buff spawn. If you do it right, the enemy jungler shouldn't be on full health, should be on low mana, and you'll have this advantage of way more mana, and of course way more health, and the green buff shield and explosion for that advantage in that fight. And you know, when that's successful, it sets up the early game lead for your whole team, not just your jungler. Because you're going to get both the river buffs with that advantage, providing the mana to keep farming for you and your mid lane. And with the enemy jungler dead, you can just pop in their jungle straight after to clean out their amber link that they just filled up, or even steal the enemy white camps, putting you further ahead and, of course, putting the enemy further behind. The strategy is solid and does work very well at high elo. It's a common strategy I see from some of the better jungle players. But it's also not the only way you can swing it. Perhaps you place the dummy ward in their off-lane jungle instead because they were watching their own jungle very quickly. Maybe that happened. So, successful jungle routes will lead you to clear out green and all white surrounding it, then claim the first river buff at 3 minutes, taking that mana that you just got from that buff, rotating into your off-lane jungle to continue farming up to get that last bit of CXP to return home with. At that stage in the clear, you as the jungler will probably be pretty hurt and maybe you've spent most of your mana, which would mean you're perfect for a gank, don't you think? Invading the enemy off-lane jungle is easy and straightforward. You have more allies around you to help because you've got the duo lane and mid nearby, and less enemies to collapse on you because they have just the solo laner and just the mid laner. So the timing of that gank is all important, but a lot easier when you have vision to know where the enemy jungler is instead of just guessing. To get full use out of the dummy ward, you kind of have to understand how the jungle works. The timings at which a jungle will go for the river buff, or take green, or go into his off lane. But even if you don't know these little details that are very important that you should be learning, it's not the end of the world, because a dummy ward is still useful. Because everyone can do it. If you can get one at the green buff and the off lane side, that's a huge advantage because you'll have crazy vision over the enemy jungle. What about warding on raptors or the river buffs early? That could be useful too because maybe the enemy's doing an early gank. At lower elos, the enemy jungle might not be doing the perfect route and might be ganking a lot earlier than you expect. So with dummy wards in your river in the early game, you can spot these early rotations and be ready for them. So who should be using dummy wards? Your jungle? Your support? Again, everyone. It costs you nothing but one deck slot to put in a dummy ward in your deck. Pick it up the moment you drop in game and run straight to where you want to place it. If your whole team does this, you're going to have 5 wards on the map in the early game straight away. That's a blatant advantage over the early game, one that you can use to get ahead. So whether you're solo queue or duo queue or whatever, make use of this tactic. If alone, get that vision on the enemy green buff. If you're in duo, get it over the off lane too. Those are the most important spots in my opinion. Thanks for watching and listening. I hope I could help you guys understand this tactic and why it can be so good. You know, you'll see competitive players in PCL and PCS doing this, even in ladder as well, because it's such an important and useful thing to do. So make use of it yourself, especially in lower elo, guys. You are going to get away with some crazy shit if you have this vision advantage over them in the early game. And at lower elo, you're going to see this tactic less and less. Either way, stick around on the channel for more Paragon videos coming up, and I'll see you next time.